Anyone wishing to speak before the committee should complete an appearance form and hand it to a member of the sergeant's office. Should you select to waive your speaking time, your position will be included in the committee meeting records. You are recognized for 3 minutes.
Wonderful. Good afternoon, members of the committee. I would like to remind you guys that the people in this room, by vast majority, are the future of the state of Florida. And the future of the state of Florida strongly rejects this bill. I'd like to also thank our Congresswoman over here for being here today. This is extremely important to myself as a member of the LGBTQ+ community, and I strongly oppose this bill. I'd like to remind Congress of their job. Their job is not to restrict free speech, and that includes government entities. Many of these speakers here today have reminded you guys that the Supreme Court historically has not recognized this as constitutional. They have found it historically to be grossly unconstitutional in nature. Many have said here today, the rights of LGBTQ+ Americans is not a partisan issue. It is a neutral issue. If you believe that civil rights are not a neutral issue, you have an issue. Just like we wouldn't take down statues of MLK Jr. at my state-funded college, we shouldn't be taking down things that represent the civil rights of Americans that happen to be LGBTQ+. If state government and federal government should be allowed to fly flags in support of Back the Blue, then the state should be allowed to support the LGBTQ+ community in their well-deserved civil rights. It is a partisan issue whether or not the state of Israel has the right to commit the actions that they commit, and it is a partisan issue whether or not we should back the blue. Those are partisan issues that are clearly given a double standard in this matter. Once again, this is unconstitutional, and I beg the committee to reject this bill, as it has been before.
Thank you. Okay, Senators, we are in debate. Senator Polsky, you're recognized.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. I want to thank everyone for coming out. Your stories are really important. Thank you for making yourselves vulnerable and speaking so eloquently. I, even as someone who practiced law, learned a couple of things today, and I really appreciate the hard work. And you all spoke succinctly, which we appreciate, but really wise words. I love how so many of you spoke about the kinds of priorities that you expect your senators to be working on. And I urge my fellow committee members to remember that this is what our constituents are asking us to do, to work on housing, insurance, storm resilience, the price of food, things that property insurance, things that we actually could fix to make people's lives better. So I want to thank you all for coming out. It has been said many times how vague and unclear this bill is. When you have bills written this way, it makes a very poor policy, because how is it going to be implemented? The fact that those questions couldn't be answered tells you this is not a good piece of legislation. You know, frankly, it's really just about people being scared of LGBTQ kids and not wanting any talk of it in a classroom. Some of them are the most vulnerable among us, as was testified to today. And shouldn't a teacher, for example, because clearly that's what this is about, shouldn't a teacher be able to reach out to students and say, I'm here for you if you want to talk. I see you, I appreciate you. You will not be discriminated against in my classroom. Imagine also if a student is walking by another classroom and sees a pride flag and doesn't have that teacher and goes up to that teacher and says, hey, can I talk to you? I really appreciate that you have that flag there. And maybe that teacher is gay, and that teacher can become a friend, advocate, mentor to that student. Just imagine the change in life that would be for someone. And isn't that what we want a teacher to do? Mr. Straight Down the Road America over here, is it so bad to have to say to your child, so your teacher, Mrs. Smith, displayed a flag so that Johnny could feel comfortable in the classroom. And if the child asks questions, you know what? That's okay. And as a parent, it's our job to answer the tough questions for our children. I'm not scared of those conversations. I'm sorry that Mr. Straight Down the Road America is. But guess what? We are not straight down the road America. I don't even know what that means. I am proud to not be straight down the road America. I don't want us to contribute to another lawsuit. We have had so many under this current administration, and guess who's paying the exorbitant legal fees, sometimes $800 an hour for outside counsel. And I've been trying for years to get information from our Attorney General's office about how we choose law firms and why can't we use our hundreds of in-house lawyers to fight these bills or defend these unconstitutional bills that we have to pay outside law firms when we know very well that we are going to be challenged and we are going to lose. But regardless, you are all going to pay for the price of defending those lawsuits. But we know this going in. That's what's so sad. The Constitution doesn't seem to matter. We have spent, I don't know, I guess an hour on this issue in a government operations committee. This is our first meeting of the year. Shouldn't we be talking about how better to run our government than, as someone said, pieces of cloth that make some people feel really good, and if other people don't feel so good, that's okay too, because that's learning and growing. So I urge my fellow committee members to vote no on this unnecessary and frankly hurtful bill to Floridians. Thank you.
Senator Arrington, in debate.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Well, first off, I want to thank everybody. I want to echo my colleagues' sentiments. Thank you for coming and testifying today. I learned some stuff as well. I try not to be redundant, but I do want to reiterate a little bit what Sebastian said, too, that this is not what folks or what our constituents are asking us for. I received, as of yesterday, 4,300 emails asking me to vote no on this bill. I have not asked a constituent ask for this legislation. They do ask for things, just as Sebastian said, like affordability, housing, transportation, property insurance, the stuff that we all are talking about with our friends or with our family members. So I too am disappointed that this is the first bill that I'm hearing, or second bill I'm hearing in this first committee stop, and appreciate you all for coming today. But I do want to bring up, there were some parts that were actually really scary to me in this legislation. On one, who is going to be the interpreter of this bill, and who is going to be in charge of what kind of flags can go out, and then who will be the enforcer. When asked, what is reasonable force, it's not in the bill. I think when Senator Polsky asked a specific if something could be done for her, the bill sponsor said depending on the definition of reasonable force, but we don't have a definition of reasonable force. And when I Google reasonable force, it's a little bit scary with the opportunities or what things that can be done to individuals. So I will definitely be a no today for a lot of those scary reasons, and also because we're supposed to be free Florida, and this is not about freedom. If you look in the bill analysis, as was brought up, under Section E and the other constitutional issues, this may violate the Due Process Clause. There's no definition of political viewpoint. All public employees have First Amendment protections. For all these reasons, and just the fact that it's not necessary and it's something hateful to certain communities, I will be a no today and ask my colleagues to support in voting no for this. Thank you.
Senator Broder.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm a little disappointed in the kinds of attacks we've seen today. Ad hominem attacks on individuals have no bearing on my decision-making. And the red herrings about what we spend our time on don't resonate either. We file 3,000 bills a year in this legislature and pass 200 to 300 of them. I guess nobody saw the press conference last week where all our insurance rates came down and 11 new carriers entered. We're working on all of that too. But today we're working on this. And the reason we're working on this is all the parents who have contacted me that expected that when they go to when their children go to school, that they're learning reading, writing, and arithmetic and not propaganda. And that is what they're talking to us about. And I don't know whether or not they have read the Kennedy v. Bremerton court case that said that the rights of public school, the First Amendment rights of public school teachers are not limitless. I don't know whether they were reading BWA v. Farmington that said that there are certain instances in which free speech is legitimately restricted in a school. These are places where there are exceptions to the all public employees have rights argument. And so I think one of the reasons why I'm going to be up on it today is that I'm taking a phrase from one of the people that just testified. The government has no place in dictating what views are acceptable. Right. Not mine, not yours. Government is a place for everybody. That doesn't mean a restaurant, it doesn't mean a club, doesn't mean a private house, it doesn't mean anywhere else. It means a taxpayer-paid place should be acceptable to everyone, which means not offensive to anyone. And no matter what you believe in your heart, in your political views, if it's anything outside of a government building, those could be offensive to someone. And so for that reason, this doesn't affect anybody's First Amendment rights anywhere except a government building where all should be acceptable. I'm up.
Thank you, Senator. Senator Rodriguez in debate.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I want to commend Senator Fine for filing this good bill. I think Senator Broder, his comments encapsulated what I was feeling, which is, you know, in your private property, in your home, in your business, wherever you are, you can put whatever you want. No one's telling you you can't, right? We still live in a free country. That is completely allowable. But in terms of government buildings, you know, I think the mandate from the voters in this last cycle was very clear. We're going back to basics. We're not going to use government buildings for propaganda or to express political views. This is a country for everyone and for all views, whether you agree with them or not, but we should not have anything on our buildings that offends people or that, you know, makes anyone feel uncomfortable. So with that, I do support this bill. It's a good bill. Thank you.
In further debate. Chair Fine, you recognize the closer on your bill.
Well, thank you, and I want to thank the mostly civil comments that we had today. Actually, it went a lot better than I expected, and I want to thank the students who took the time to come up here. If you need a note to get an excused absence, I'm sure any of us would be happy to give that for you. I was in Sarasota last night and got here at 2 o'clock in the morning, so I know about how far it is. You know, one of the things that makes our legislative process good, and one of the things we've seen it hasn't worked over the last few weeks on another issue, is the committee process where you get feedback. And we got feedback here today, and there are things that we can do to tighten up the bill, and we will do that as it moves through the process. So this is not a take it or leave it. The best bills that I have filed in the 9 years that I have been in this legislature, and I've passed over 40 of them, which I'll talk about in a little bit, the best bills I've passed were the ones that are very different at the end than they started at the beginning. As Senator Broder said, we do have the ability to walk and chew gum, and it is a red herring argument. I was late to this committee because I was at a press conference with the president about another issue that we are working on. So we have the ability to work on multiple things at once. And the fact that we spend an hour listening to public comment, frankly, I could make the similarly specious argument that that's time that we could have gotten back to working on insurance and all of these other things. So it works both ways. But we work on other things all the time. I will leave here to work on other bills. The bill doesn't have cost beyond perhaps dealing with those who would seek to, they're so committed to the idea of political flags being in schools that they would be willing to sue for it. But there's no cost other than that to make sure that we keep this stuff out of a classroom. As it relating to being unconstitutional, there is no constitutional law that says teachers or government employees have the right to issue political messages when they are at work in their government confines. It just doesn't exist. Now, if we said a teacher couldn't fly any flag they wanted when they left the school, that absolutely would be unconstitutional. And I would never do that. But we'll talk about what should happen in the classroom. The notion that this is deeply unpopular is simply false. I think, as we heard, the fact that a bill doesn't pass the first or second time doesn't mean that it's deeply unpopular. Lots of good bills don't pass the first or second time. And I think there was a mandate that we heard in November about what we thought schools should be focused on. And I think it's not political messaging. The last thing I would say is this. I talked about public versus private speech, and again, what students can expect. But there's oftentimes in these debates, I don't come up with these bills by thinking about one particular message, one particular focus. I may have when I'm talking about it to the public, but that's not how I think about these bills. I think about, and I think the mistake that people make is they don't think about it the other way. And I would leave you with this. The same people who were so upset that we might take away certain political flags in classrooms and oppose this bill, I guarantee you, if Trump flags started showing up in classrooms and on government flagpoles and in the back of this room, the same people who are so upset about those flags being taken down would be in here screaming and yelling for those flags to come down. Political messaging has no place with the government. That is not the government's job. The government's job is to serve us. You want to fight for those political messages? Some of them I agree with that I heard today. Some of them I don't. But go out and fight. It's great. That's America. That's what you should do. Go campaign. Get candidates. Go protest outside. But your government shouldn't be putting their finger on the scale. That's what this bill does. That's why it's a good bill. And that's why I hope all of my colleagues will support it today.
Thank you, Senator. Tamara, please call the roll on Senate Bill 100.
Senator Arlington,
No.
Senator Broder,
Yes.
Senator Grahl, Senator McLean,
Yes.
Senator Polsky. No. Senator Rodriguez. Yes. Senator Fine,
Yes.
Chair DeSigley.
Yes. By your vote, Senate Bill 100 is reported favorably. And with that, Mr. Chair, I give you back the gavel.
Seeing no other business before the committee, Senator DeSigley moves we adjourn. Is there objection? Seeing none, show the motion adopted. We are adjourned.